All right, y'all, welcome back to another episode 7 of the Back to the Game Sportscast, where we talk about some of the hottest topic in sports, some of the hottest debates in sports, and some of the glory days about sports, which I'll start to get into too, some of the history of sports, which is probably the most exciting part of this for me. And we dissect them and we try to give it a point of view that, listen, there's a million of these podcasts, but I'm going to try to do my thing and hopefully it's something that resonates with people. Also, just want to say, I realized in watching back my episodes that I uploaded that I did not introduce myself in the episodes. So, making up for all of those episodes, my name is Samuel Maria. I am your host of the Back to the Game Sportscast, and sorry about that, but if you've been liking the content that you've been seeing so far, most likely still nobody is watching this, and that is okay. But if you are and you're liking what you're seeing, please go ahead and like and subscribe and comment, and send to your friends who love sports. I love engaging. I love conversation that enhances my thoughts on it. So let's get to it. Appreciate everybody watching. I'm trying something a little different today. Today I'm going to go ahead and try my DJI mic. I'm feeling a little more hands-free. I felt like the Shure mic was great, but limits me a little bit. So I'm going to see how this goes. Maybe I go back to a Shure mic, maybe I don't. But we're going to try this out. But let me get to today's episode where I want to talk about one of the hot topics in sports right now, kind of some of the things coming out of this last NFL season, which kind of ended on a dud with a dud Super Bowl with the Eagles whooping on the Chiefs. Still feels very good to say. I got to say I'm biased. But one of the storylines that came out of the Super Bowl was the most recent news out of the AFC East, the New York Jets, who have just informed last week Aaron Rodgers, the legendary quarterback, that they will not be bringing him back and they will not be needing his services anymore. Man, what a journey for Aaron. I have so many thoughts on this, but I tune into all the sports shows. I've heard what everybody has to say. Much of the theme about what I'm going to talk about has been echoed here and there. Now, there's no proof to this. I haven't been doing this show long, but the things that are being said about Aaron Rodgers, I've felt for a long time, dating back to, I want to say, 8-9 years ago, when he was like slinging that thing with Green Bay and there could be no wrong, and Stephen A. and even Shannon Sharp, who's become his biggest detractor, called him the greatest quarterback ever, even while Tom Brady was still playing. And I was always, because I'm a Tom Brady fan, I was always defensive about that, but I also felt like I had an argument for it. And then the years waned on, and now here we are. And the Aaron Rodgers story truly unfolding, because in the end, you can't help but to be yourself in this life. And so there's many takes on the Aaron Rodgers thing, but here's mine. And it's one that I think I've only heard one sports media voice really kind of harp on. I think a lot of people try to stay away from it. On this podcast, we're not going to do that. We are going to say what we mean and mean what we say, and screw it. Because the reality about this, the nature of this, is that you can be wrong about anything you say. So much of it is forecasting. And all we know about forecasting is that you can go fall on your face. Ask some of the media experts about that. But I'm going to try to keep my opinion here as level-headed as I can, because I think what I'm about to address can be seen as a personal attack towards Aaron Rodgers, and I don't want it to be seen that way because I relate to Aaron in a lot of these things. And the only other person in the media that I've heard talk about, and to me, who I think is the best at the moment, pound for pound, the best media voice, is Colin Cowherd. I always mess up his last name, from the Herd. I think he gets a lot of stuff wrong, but man, when he's on the money, he's on the money. And the one thing about him, it does tend to be reactive. When he's on the money, he tends to, oh, now you're realizing it. But I do think that he has a very authentic voice. He's very honest. And then I think he's also very creative. So I think as far as the sports media landscape, I think Colin is the best at this. But he's the only one I heard say this and talk about this aspect that might be impacting Aaron Rodgers and the trajectory of his career, which is now culminating in being a 40-year-old quarterback who just got released by one of the worst franchises in NFL teams in the last, 3-4 decades. And it's the point that while I think there's a lot to Aaron Rodgers and decisions he's made that has led him to this, a lot of selfish things, I think at the core of all of those decisions that he's made, whether it's the Egypt trip or the ayahuasca in the middle of the season, or not showing up to mini camp, or before that, push the whole vaccine thing, which I was not against him not choosing to take it. I was actually for that, but I was against how he went about addressing it and deceiving the media. And he just always appeared very selfish to me, very arrogant, not very team first, often a little unprofessional, and did it in a very kind of like sly, conniving way that I don't even think he was aware he was doing. It's like a slight narcissism. But I do think that all of that stems from one principled decision that I don't think that Aaron missed out on. And he's kind of been paying the price ever since. And hey, if you're wrong, please, in the comments, let me know what you think. But I think Aaron's biggest mistake was not getting married. I think it's really as simple as that. I think, and listen, I'm not saying this as a judgment. Me and Aaron, I think Aaron's like older than me by a year or two. There you go. I'm dating myself. And I am unmarried. I am not married. And, I don't judge Aaron for not getting married. I do understand every individual has their own trajectory, their own path. I also relate to a lot of Aaron's story as far as his upbringing, his relationship with his family. So I could see how someone from his background would take a little longer to decide on that life-changing, life-altering decision. However, so I don't say any of this from a place of judgment. I want to address this from a place of observation. Someone who's been observing sports and professional athletes for my whole life. Something that I did observe from the athletes who, at the highest level, are able to reach immortal status and become some of the all-time greats. And Aaron's achieved that to a large degree. His skill set alone makes him one of the all-time greats. But what kept him from that realm of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, now Pat Mahomes, Joe Montana, I think was the singular decision by Aaron, whether on purpose or not, to not get married. I've always told my friends this in private. I haven't been married personally. I like to tell myself that the biggest reason is because I wanted to be financially stable. I wanted to have a lot of my own things going on before I made that giant leap. I'm sure that there's a lot more things at play for me personally here. I'm not going to try to get into my personal life too much. But I always told them, but if I was a pro athlete and I came into millions in my early 20s, oh, somebody's getting pregnant. That's what I would say to my friends. Oh, somebody's getting pregnant. But what I really mean is I would get married and I would start a stabilizing force in my life, because it is not normal for you to overnight become a mega millionaire in America playing one of the premier positions in American sports and not have that in some way or another affect you, not only in the things that you come across, but in the thoughts that you have. And so I've always noticed athletes who get themselves into a marriage and commit themselves to something bigger than themselves, something to ground them, go about the rest of their careers always walking with their feet on the ground. Despite how big they get, how many championships they win, how many records they break, they still have people at home who depend on them. And to them, he's just mom, he's just dad, they're just mom. And to their significant other, they're just their wife and their husband. And I think that there is an immense value in that to a pro athlete's trajectory, because so much around you tells you just how great you are and how wrong you can do. And for Aaron Rodgers, much of his career was about that very point. There was nothing he could do that was wrong. There was nothing he could do. He was the greatest thrower of the ball they have ever seen, and he escaped the pocket the best. And look all the things he could do that Tom can and Peyton can. And you could see how for someone like Rodgers, who's highly intelligent, a highly intelligent football player and a deep thinker, how that kind of fed his ego. And then there was no, how do I say this? I just want to make sure my mic's working. Yeah. How do I say this? There was no checking that would come with a wife at home, maybe some kids at home, that I'm sure for a lot of pro athletes today is what stops them, is a guardrail from making a lot of bad decisions in their interactions with the media and in their interactions with the world. When they're on the road, it keeps them focused. On top of that, having a stable partner at home also winds up taking care of a lot of things for you so that you can be singularly focused on being the best you can be on the field, on the court. Now, I'm a big LeBron James detractor. You guys will learn that about me. But one thing I always give him credit on, and I don't know anything about their relationship in depth, but he married Savannah from right away. That's his high school sweetheart. And there's a lot of things that people can say about LeBron James. They can't deny his success. You cannot deny that LeBron James is the second most successful basketball player to have ever lived. And listen, it doesn't always work out. Michael got divorced. Tom got divorced. But that decision alone forced them to ground down and focus on what got them there. And I think for Aaron, much of what's happening to him now is a culmination of, for years now, there's been no one checking him. There's been nothing bigger than him in his life to make a lot of the behavior that he's displayed be something that he kind of changes or thinks about and doesn't do again. And I think that is something that I heard Colin harp on very briefly. He kind of just compared it to other quarterbacks who were, but I think it's much deeper. It's much deeper. It's a spiritual thing. These top athletes are experiencing something most of us will never get to experience. And it's a level of riches and fame in the peak prime of your physical life that isn't normal. And so you have to prioritize creating a semblance of normalcy so that you can keep your feet on the ground, because you will eventually come crashing down. And I think a lot of what has happened with Aaron, his outspokenness on certain topics that he might not be an expert on, his wanting to appear as some sort of guru of understanding life, which I get. I'm like that myself. I think this is not judgment, because I relate to Aaron. I could see myself. I am that person in my personal life The difference is I'm not a superstar athlete. And so life humbles me every day, and although I've never been married, I've had some incredible women come into my life. And I can tell you, there is nothing that can hold a mirror up to you, to your life, to where you are, how you're perceived, and how you should move in the world for a man than a good woman. It really, and this is as a man who hasn't married any of them, but I have connected deeply with several of them, and nothing compares. And I am finally in my life looking to do the same, and I hope that this is also true for Aaron. And it's never too late to make that decision. That's the beauty of life, right? It's never too late to decide, okay, now I'm ready for this kind of connection. And for some, maybe it's not for some people. I'm just speaking about what it does for an athlete. Even if you don't think it's for you, it might be the best decision for your career, to stabilize yourself in that way. The thing is, I'm not a pro athlete. So it's not too late for Aaron, and it's not too late for me. However, it might be too late for Aaron's career. He could have afforded himself playing in a very small town, one of the premier brands in all of sports, the Green Bay Packers. He could have afforded himself that stability, and perhaps in those years, in those gap years where it was him, Manning, and Brady, and out of all of them, he was the youngest and most athletically gifted, he underachieved. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. I will say it definitely wasn't the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers did everything they could to provide Aaron Rodgers every opportunity to win. McCarthy isn't the best coach. He's also he's not a bum. He's a pretty darn good coach. And he's an offensive-minded coach. And then the latest coach of the Green Bay Packers, whose name is escaping me, he's pretty great too. He's showing that since. But I think Aaron's distractions, Aaron's not putting the importance on football because he believed his own hype that there was something bigger than it, when football was the reason anyone actually listened to anything he had to say, and he wasn't humble enough to own that. I think a lot of that stems from not making the decision to commit to something bigger than himself. And for me, that is God and eventually and family. Although I'm not married, I am a big family man. Unlike Rodgers, I am close to my family, even if it's complicated. I try to be close to them, and I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I know the inner workings of his family. All I know that I've heard that it's complicated for him too. But I think that he might have made a mistake in choosing to remain single throughout his NFL career, because I think it had him not living in the real world. Because being a multi-millionaire single superstar quarterback just isn't a reality most people share. You're kind of in rare air. You're by yourself. And so in that world, especially if you're an intellectual, your intelligence starts beating out your wisdom. Unless you have someone, a partner, a family that grounds you. And so I wanted to share that opinion on Aaron Rodgers, because I'm not surprised by his release by the Jets. And I don't know what's going to happen next with Aaron. He's not the quarterback he used to be. And I don't see much of his whole ego things being checked, because he's still kind of in the same place. But that is always a thought that I've had about him. And when I hear him speak, I always see this arrogance that I feel that if he had a wife at home, be like, honey, why did you say that? Why did you talk about that? Why did you say the things you say? Why did you say them in that way? And there's no, in him, there's no, I don't want my kids to hear me say that. I don't think, And like even Tom, who was late to marriage compared to most other athletes who tend to marry in their early 20s and have kids. Tom waited to his late 20s, early 30s, kind of an old man. But when he made that commitment, his career went to a whole other level. He was a three-time Troy Aikman type quarterback before that. Great career. Then he went to God level after 30. He also married Giselle after 30. He also had his 3 kids after 30. And, Tom is a different case because, man, his family is the ideal family. I was at the Hall of Fame induction in New England, in Foxborough, and they did this video that's online everywhere. This documentary film on Tom's family, and it's like they're out of storybook. I mean, he had the perfect parents, a perfect example. So Tom had the blueprint, and maybe Aaron didn't, but it would have served him, I think, in his career and in his legendary status to have stabilized his own life in that way. So if any future athlete, or if anyone listening to this knows an athlete, a young athlete coming up and they're about to come into an incredible fortune, be sure to surround him with people who ground them. And when they're man enough and ready, preferably, in my opinion, earlier than better, have them commit to something bigger than themselves, whatever that looks like. I personally think marriage and kids is a good thing, but I'm not casting stones to anyone who doesn't. I haven't gotten married, although I'm hoping to someday, because I think it is needed for young athletes. Man, this episode ran way longer than I thought it would, but hopefully you got something from it. I don't know if it's any different from what you've been hearing from other sports takers out there, but that was a thought I wanted to have in regards to the legendary quarterback that is Aaron Rodgers. We'll see where he goes to next. His season is now ended. His season with the Jets is now over. Doesn't look too good for him, but that dude's paid up, and he is a legend regardless of any of this. So no judgment here, just an observation. And all right, guys, I'll catch you on the next episode. This is the Back to the Sports podcast with your boy Samuel Maria. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts.